tata kennol hanni sola lampol meki de silo ka kenda malila fala sola enterprise foto do mungol ganyi banko kanje be mutu
Sumanu baro kunjurunko ikonga faleko namu badabanta ilafla sola la EU-Gambia belo Gambia la sola enter na sola enterprise sola nimbati kendo kurao de dasala aboro sinenamo kaji sena odila Gambia la sola enter na sola enter na sola enterprise jaliwo sola kende soto jali man fofena o sola kende soto na enterprise sumanu baro kunjurunko.
Good day. This is a special interview with the European Union delegation ambassador in the Gambia with me, Mustafa Sise, here on Kerr Fatou. This interview is going to give you a perspective of a lot of things about the EU, the programs and policies of the European Union in the Gambia, and as well as it will also clear some misconceptions regarding the EU as a bloc. And then migration, it has, like people say, the EU perspective on migration or the EU-Gambia relationship in terms of migration and other aspects. My guest here today is His Excellency Corrado Pampaloni. Welcome to this interview.
Happy to be here, and thanks for having me.
Thank you too for granting us this interview. So to start with, yes, a little bit of your background before we go into the interview. I understand you are not only a diplomat, but you are also, you have...
No, I am a veterinarian.
Yes.
I have never done the veterinarian, to be honest. Once I took my degree, I went to developing countries to work in the rural development. For example, I started in Africa many years ago in Angola, following projects back then already funded by the European Union on improving the breeding stocks, the crops, etc. I was following the rural development in the south of the country. Then I won a competition to enter in the European Union as an official. And within the European Union, I entered in the Foreign Affairs Service, and that is where I grew, and that is why you have me now as an ambassador.
Thank you very much. We now have a veterinarian turned ambassador or turned diplomat. Yeah. So now we go to when you representing the European Union in the Gambia. Tell us about the European Union. Who constitute the European Union?
Yeah, thank you. Is a very broad question and very articulate to answer. Now, the European Union was founded after the Second World War. The European member states said, we need peace. We need a way to found a permanent peace in the continent. And so they began to join together in organizations that were very thematic linked, like, for example, coal and steel organization. And from those experiences where they learned how to coordinate their policy together, they grew up in an organization of state that, like the one that we have now. But we don't have to forget that each member state of the European Union is an independent member state that can decide both in his own internal policies and is contributing to the policy making of the European Union. So, for example, a member state like mine, which is Italy, doesn't agree on something that the European is doing, they raise their voice and they say, we don't agree. And depending on the issues or on which kind of majority it's needed to approve that kind of issue, also even one member state could be the blocking point. So each member state is an important brick that constitutes the European Union.
Thank you very much. So it's understandable that the European Union constitutes of independent member states.
Yes.
And to some extent, some member states do not agree with certain things that the bloc is doing, yet they contribute to the development of it.
Yes.
So coming down to the Gambia, you are the head of the European Union ambassador, the European Union delegation rather in the Gambia. Let's know who constitutes this delegation here in the Gambia that you lead.
The European delegation is an embassy that represents the European Union. I think that you are more familiar as a concept, let's say, the UN office. Now, the UN is an organization of state. The EU is an organization of state with, let's say, a different status on international and diplomatic level, because we have a legal status as the European Union. Now, of course, the office, as you say, is a diplomatic one. My status is a status of ambassador, but it hasn't always been like this. At the beginning, a European delegation was called European Commission delegation. The Commission is only one of the institutions that constitute the European Union institutions. The European Commission is the organ that has the power to propose and create things like laws, but also actions, etc. However, with the different treaties that improved the European Union, there is a process that has been put in place and is called co-decision process. So the European Commission cannot decide alone anymore. The European Council, which represents the states, the independent states, must agree, and the European Parliament, in certain cases, must agree, and in any case, their advice is needed. So this is the way the European Union works. Here on the ground, in the territories, in the third countries, all the same third countries are the same. We just collect instructions from the headquarters and we put them in place. We are in charge of the relation between our bloc and each single country where we stay, in this case with the Gambia. The interlocutor, of course, is the direct interlocutor is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is our entry point to the government. And the office is composed a little bit like the European Union. You have officials that come a little bit from everywhere in Europe, and there's the 50% of the staff that are Gambian colleagues. So we have a component of local colleagues and international. In this moment, in my office, there is an Italian, which is me, now two Italians actually, Belgian, Polish, Spanish, and Belgian, Irish. So we have a little bit of the representation of all the member states that compose our very complicated infrastructure, let's say.
Interesting, of course, though, no British now.
No British now, alas.
Yeah, because they are out of the EU. Yeah, so we go straight. So this is a question that might be lingering on the mind of an ordinary Gambian. Given out the structure of the European Union, the history, it comprises of states in Europe. But why are they in Africa, especially in the Gambia?
Why we are in Africa and why we are in the Gambia? It's a very interesting question. The European Union didn't start its presence as European Union. As you know, we started as colonial powers. Then after that, the European member states left the Gambia as power. It remained, though, among the not so pleasant memories, there remains, though, legacies, like a continued exchange, sometimes for centuries and centuries before, no? Africa and Europe are probably the two continents that are more interconnected in the world because we have centuries of exchanges. Now, when it all started as European Union, the member states decided to put together a fund, which was called European Development Fund, that was exactly meant to cooperate with the third states, and we are talking about Africa, but it could be the Pacific or the Caribbean as well, for their development. So they put in place offices that were offices of cooperation for development, and then these offices also grew with the growth of the European Union as a legal status. So these offices became delegation. The head of the office back then was called head of delegation, but didn't have the status of ambassador. And then slowly, after the Treaty of Lisbon, which improved the status of the European integration, we are called now ambassador. We have the title of ambassador, and our offices have the status of embassies.
Interesting. So now we go to the EU-Gambia relationship. Prior to your deployment in the Gambia, you have somebody here who was Attila Lajos, I could remember, European ambassador. So part of his tenure was under the former president. But then the EU-Gambia relationship, even before he came, was not that much cordial. Let's talk something about the current Gambia-EU relationship now.
Yes, I remember that back then when there was President Jammeh and my predecessor during the part of his tenure with Jammeh, the relations between the Gambia and the European Union were defined as cordial but distant. Now,
cordial but distant.
Yes.
That is a diplomatic term.
We are a diplomatic body.
So what does it mean in that ordinary term?
Well, of course, you know, we had, as a bloc, we have common policies, for example, on human rights. We have common policies on labor. We have common policies on the rule of law. And we are profoundly linked by one fundamental value, which is democracy. So you can imagine that with the previous regime, we didn't see eye to eye for a number of issues.
Okay. So now it seems the relationship is different. It has taken a different dimension.
Yes, now we define them friendly relationships.
From cordial, distant to friendly relationships.
Yes.
Now. Yes. So the EU has some policies. EU delegation is implementing some EU policies in the Gambia on behalf of the EU.
Yes.
Can you tell us some of these policies that the EU has on the Gambia?
Yes, thank you for the question,
and
because
perhaps programs as well. We can put them together, the policies and the programs.
Yes.
Yes.
It allows me to complete what I was telling you about the evolution. No? We
Yeah.
started from an office of cooperation, etc., and now we are a diplomatic. But we didn't forget our past of cooperation. So an embassy is typically composed by many sectors. One of the sectors is the cooperation for development. Now, in the Gambia, we have, when President Barrow won the first elections, there was, as you remember, the conference, international conference for the Gambia.
Yes, Brussels, yeah.
Yes, and there were a certain number of pledges. Now, the pledges were a lot, more than 1 billion euros. Some of the donors, because of the COVID, because of other reasons, they didn't follow up with the pledge, but the European Union did. So we dedicated a very big envelope for the Gambia to accompany the Gambia in the transition that they needed. Back in the time, I think that were more than 350 million euros. as an envelope. But if you compare the envelope that we gave to the Gambia to other envelope of countries that are much bigger with much more population, that was disproportionately high, no? But there was a reason. There was a reason the government needed a hand to complete the transition. Now we have a new envelope that has been approved last year and that we are organizing during this year.
What's the name of the new envelope?
Oh, it's always, it's a good question, because the previous envelope was called EDF 11,
Yes.
European Development Fund. Now the European Development Fund doesn't exist anymore because the money of that fund have been incorporated in the budget of the European Union. That is so-called budgetization of the EDF. It is called Cooperation Envelope, a multi-annual indicative program, and it has the implementation part is called Annual Actual Plan. So differently from before, now our plans will have a monitoring that will be more regular and very close from one year to the other. In 2024, we will have what we will call the midterm review, and we will see how the money have been committed and implemented, and the program implemented, in order to decide for the next part of the envelope.
Good. So this envelope, I understand, is in two folds. It's in two phases.
Yes.
The first phase is already running, begun from the 2021, and it's stopping in 2024. And there is possibility of the second phase also from 2024 to 2027.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
So after the midterm review.
Yes.
So what would it be like if the midterm review proved that otherwise? Would the second phase still unfold?
No, I think that I'm very positive, and I like always to think positive. So both the government and us will do our best to commit all the funds, because the tricky part is that we need to commit the funds before the 2024. This what it means. It means finding together what to do, finding projects, finding interlocutors, finding collaborations, and in this way we fund the projects that are deemed to be done following our program, multi-annual envelope, which has 3 pillars. So all these projects need to be within these 3 pillars.
Good. So I understand that as part of this project, or the EU also is taking, or the EU delegation, or the EU as an institution is sponsoring some infrastructural feed roads. Is that something that's part of this multi-indicators program?
Well, yes, actually, we also for this project, in the past we have funded, for example, the Senegambia Bridge together with the African Development Bank. But we have plenty of projects on infrastructures. They go from the port, the rehabilitation of the port of Banjul, to the creations and implementations of waterways in the River Gambia as an alternative option to the road, especially for the transport of goods, etc. Creation of multi-purpose platforms. For example, in Genoa, we are building already, we have inaugurated at the end of last year, we have inaugurated a platform that will be a commercial platform where all the producers will be able to take their goods and commerce them and trade them directly instead of passing with a lot of middlemen.
Yes, I personally witnessed the inauguration of the project in Genoa.
You were there?
I was there. Yes. Now let's go to probably the most contentious part of this interview is, yes, migration. A lot of Gambians are in the EU countries, and of recent we've seen some of them coming back. Well, why is this so?
Why they have to come back?
Yes, some of them in the name of deportation. So the government of the Gambia vehemently denied that the government has signed with EU states deportation deal. However, the former Interior Minister, as when he was Interior Minister in the February 2021, before the National Assembly Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, said the Gambia government has signed a deportation deal with the EU, unquote, good practice document. That's how they call it. And he went further to highlight or to give out the modalities of that deal. One of the modalities include the notification by EU states of the Gambia government. Here we are bringing back some people belonging to your state. That's one of the modalities he said. Another modality he said was verification. That means the Gambian authorities have to first verify whether the people who are due for return are actually Gambians. And another one he also said was about upon verifying that they are Gambians, now they also have to provide what we call emergency certificates for them. What do you have to say about this?
It's all true and not true.
So true, not true.
So it is correct to say that the government doesn't have an agreement on deportation with the European Union, because the European Union doesn't have the legal status to sign such an agreement. This is something that is pertinent and exclusive power of the member state. Each independent member state has a way to deal with migration. So the European Union in all this with the Gambia is only facilitating the communication, okay? So it is true that there are documents that notify the mechanics of how this happens. Because of course, for example, a plane needs an authorization of a sovereign member state to land in their territory. A plane from Europe cannot be catapulted to the Gambia without the Gambia not having a say in that. But it is also true that each member state is responsible for the returns. Now, I take a little bit of a point when we say, when it's just words, but deportation is one thing. It implies a massive thing. You take, in Europe, we had deportations when the Nazi used to deport the Jews or the communists or whatever was not of their liking. They used to put them in trains in the thousands and send them to the concentration camp. That was called deportation. For me, deportation remains, as European, remains with a very negative connotation. Returns is something that in every state in the world, there is a legal, for foreigners, there is a legal requirement to fulfill to remain in this state. Europe is very much based on rights. So if one has the right to stay, he will stay or she will stay. And I would like to make a little in brackets here. In Europe, we have 20% of the population that is of migrant origin. Is not a small number, it's a lot. So it's not that we don't welcome migrants. But there are legal ways to do so. There are people, among which, of course, there are Gambians, that have exhausted the legal permission to remain, the legal path, ways to remain.
That would lead us to, yes, how much or how many are those that have exhausted, if you can remember?
I don't know the exact numbers, but for example, I know that between France, Spain, Italy and Germany, they must be around 20,000 or 15,000, between 15 and 20,000, let's say.
Gambians who have exhausted.
But there are 350,000 Gambians in Europe. So,
and you have, of that 350,000, you have about 15 to 20,000 who have exhausted all means of legal stay in that country.
Yes.
And they are due for return.
They are due for return, yes.
Interesting. So yes, you've already mentioned the destination countries that they are. Suppose, Gambia is part of the international community, and as a matter of fact, every sovereign state has the right or has the obligation to take back its citizens where necessary in accordance with the international law. Suppose the Gambia government, due to reasons beyond, or due to reasons says or delays in taking back this as it is right now, what are the consequences?
The consequences. Well, we have a visa code, is called. That is a code that rules on how to deliver the visas. Now, this visa code has some articles that foresee that the visas are released to citizens of third states in certain ways, touristic visa, work visa, etc. Now, but there are countries in the world that are sending migrants in big numbers to Europe, and some of these migrants are not legal. So they entered, for example, smuggled in buses, or I don't know if you have seen these horrible scenes in Afghanistan where these desperate entered in the plane and they were in the wheels of the plane and they fell from above. So they try to escape situations that are very difficult. And here I would like also to remember that the Gambians used to flee this country when there was Jammeh, and it was the third, for as small as this country is, it was the third country that was sending migrants to Europe, because they were simply fleeing. Now the numbers are collapsed. I mean, since Barrow is here, last year I don't think we reached the 400 unit. I mean, we passed from 17,000 people per year to 400. So it means that the Gambians not necessarily want to leave their country, and we acknowledge this. And but there are a lot of Gambians that have not any refugee status. They are just in Europe because they fled and entered in an irregular way, if you want, not being checked on the borders. So they find themselves in Europe without a legal status. And these Gambians, they don't have any legal way to remain. But what we do, your question is what we do now. Well, we engage with the government. We speak about this thing with the government. It's an issue that is specular. It's like a mirror. It's a problem for them, and it's a problem for us. So we need to engage in conversation and how to solve it. I can tell you that we are not so keen to always send away people. There are people that in between they found their legal path, their legal ways to remain. Some, they have a permanent job, for example, and the permanent job entitles, like in the US, the famous green card. It's the same all over the world. If you have a permanent job in my country, for example, or in Spain, that entitles you to have a permanent residence. So there are legal ways, and we want to preserve also the Gambians that have the legal status to remain in Europe. Because as you know, when politics takes hold of situation, then it becomes all politics. From one side, it is called massive deportation, and the other side is called invasion. You see, when politics take hold, there are catchphrases that are negative to the solution of the topic. So the solution, in my way, in my idea, and I think it is what in Europe is forming now, the idea of that is inspired by this compact on migration, that is a sort of agreement.
The global compact on migration.
Yes, that not only stipulates that a member state should distribute migrants among the territory of the European Union, and that each one should have their share of migrants, but also creates a new concept like circular migration, for example, and which are under the umbrella of legal pathways. So, for example, and I witnessed myself when I was in Fiji, in New Zealand, they have created a very good example in circular migration. They have seasons in New Zealand, like we have in Europe, and in certain seasons, for example, occur certain things. For example, it's a touristic season, or it's the ripening of the fruits of the apple season, etc. And in that case, they take Pacific Islander to New Zealand. They stay every year 6 months. They have a salary. They have all the social obligation done. And then when they the season is finished, they go back. But this is just one example. One example that I would dream to see improved is what we call the Erasmus+. Erasmus+, it's a tool by which university students are accepted in European university to complete, for example, the final year or the final 2 years. And that is not only an opportunity for the student, but is also an opportunity to know Europe and to exchange, allow European students to exchange with, in this case, Gambian students, but it could be Nigerian or Moroccan or Brazilian students. And of course, they need to qualify because they need to have a certain quality of curriculum and a certain quality of performance during the university, and they qualify for the Erasmus+. For me, this is one of the most powerful tools to enhance circular migration.
So, looking at this circular migration and this Erasmus tool, do we have it? And how soon do we expect that to be extended to the Gambia?
It's already in place.
Already in place.
It's already in place. There are Gambian students that have qualified for Erasmus. The numbers are not high, but I think we should work in order to increase the numbers of students that are allowed to Europe to do their final year. But this is one of the tools. A student can qualify anyway, for example, to do an entire curricula to Europe. I met Gambian students in Belgium, for example, that they have done their entire curriculum of study in Belgium. So the possibilities are there. The Erasmus is one tool more.
So that is, you can start here and then perhaps go for your final year in the Europe, provided that you've met those conditions.
Yes, you must be a good student, let's say.
All right, every student in the Gambia is a good student. If you know the conditions that Gambian students are learning, you will know actually students in the Gambia are striving hard. Just take, for example, the University of the Gambia. If you go to the University of the Gambia, as recent as last Tuesday before last, some students attended lecture from the veranda because the classroom size was small. So those who came late had to sit on the veranda and the lecturer were inside. Imagine if those people had the opportunity to sit in a fully air-conditioned room, and you have the room is facilitated with learning or is installed with learning materials, they will perform far better than anyone you can think. Yeah, so let's go down to the next point. That is, this has some consequences. If you are following the Gambian media, the Gambia Football Federation, I'm going to specific announce that these girls under 16 have been denied visa to participate in an event. And then I've also been informed by at least 3 institutions, which I will not name, we're supposed to attend the event, and they were told that those who have valid visas were allowed to go, but those who made fresh applications were rejected, and they said to me that this is as a result of the visa restriction. This is somehow impacting on the development of the Gambia in a negative way. What do you say to that?
Well, I'm not privy to that information. I'm sorry about that.
For the GFF, you can check on their page.
Yes.
When you live here, you will see they did not justify, but this is findings that we made. They did not justify it because of A, B, and C. They only said that the girls have been denied visa to travel. So, and these 3 institutions confided to me that this is the reason. Yeah.
So the visa code that I hinted before stipulates on the conditions to make a visa, no? For Gambia, because the returns have been not authorized for a long time, at a certain moment the member state decided that there was something to do because there was no cooperation from the Gambia to allow the returns. So they made some restrictions. However, the dossiers, when you do an application, you give your dossier, what you say,
yeah.
Are seen in the same way. They are not. The visa code doesn't make a restriction in terms if you are a girl 16 years and you go for sport, you cannot have the visa. It's not that detailed. The only thing that these provisions do is to delay the visa. So we have normally an engagement to deliver a visa within 15 days. This has been lifted for the Gambia as a restriction that the member state where you go to ask for the visa, the Schengen visa, is not engaged anymore in giving the visa within 15 days. And the cost of the visa is higher. But there are no other provisions. So I'm a bit surprised that somebody has been denied a visa. Probably it has been returned, the visa, and the person didn't have time enough in relation to the sportive event to do the visa. You understand what I mean? That is, I understand that is a difficult thing. It is made more difficult, but the difficulty stands only in the cost that is more expensive and the delay with which the visa has been delivered.
Your Excellency, is this fair to the ordinary Gambians? The restrictions should have been imposed on those responsible for allowing the citizens, its citizens to come, and while the ordinary Gambians remain at the usual liberty to go wherever they want to go as far as they fulfill the conditions. But if the ordinary Gambians are suffering and then those on top are not, you think it's fair to the Gambians?
I take your point. It's not up to me, of course, to decide, but this is how the restriction works. And is it fair or not? I cannot speak my heart here. I'm a diplomat, as you know.
you have the liberty to, okay. So I understand you are a diplomat. It's actually, let me put it to you, it's actually not fair to punish.
No, I am very
Gambian.
sorry that there is this situation. I am extremely sorry that there is this situation. I would like to see more circulation of people. Of course, I would like to see a more permeable world, in general. But I'm positive. I hope that this situation will be solved.
How soon or when?
Well, let's say that there was a meeting end of April among the member states on the visa restriction, because the Gambia is not the only one. There are 3 countries. One is the Gambia. And they examined the dossier, how is the cooperation, etc., etc. And the options that they had was to lift or to make it worse. So if there is no cooperation, they would make it harder. Well, they decided not to make it harder, which is for me a good sign in terms of normally they would have made it harder, because if the cooperation is still not there, the member states normally choose to make it harder. But they chose not, because there is a good dialogue in spite of the results that are disappointing for the Gambians who cannot travel that easy as they could travel. But there is a good relation. There is a good exchange of information. There are the relevant ministries are in touch with the authorities in the member states, and so there is a sort of cooperation, no?
So now we transit to some general issues. Is there any benefit that the EU is getting from, its relationship with the Gambia?
I beg your pardon?
Is there any benefit that the EU countries are getting from their relationship with the Gambia?
I think it's a very interesting question, because we have embassies only where there is an interest, of course, where there are relations. I think that when I was speaking about friendship, that now we define it as a friendly relation, we see the Gambia as a friendly country towards the European Union. And the fact, for example, that the Gambia has voted together with the European Union in condemning the attack of Russia to Ukraine is a sign, we take it as a sign of friendship.
Well, it abstained from voting in the next...
Well, it's very complicated, Russia is in the Council of the Human Rights, and voting against a member of your own institution is quite hard for everybody. And there are so many, moreover, there are so many other things to take into consideration when there are in the multilateral exchanges, when these decisions are taken, that is extremely complicated to cast a vote. But they abstained. There are other countries that they voted against.
And what's Europe's interpretation of the Gambia abstaining from voting?
Of complete understanding. We understand. We don't take it as a bad vote. We take it as a positive sign, not as a negative sign.
Yes, from the diplomatic point of view, that would be the response. But other Europeans are saying because of economic benefits or some fear of being whatsoever, that's some African countries are abstaining from voting. And I remember in a joint parliamentary session that was attended by some Gambian delegates, one of the Gambian parliamentarians, who is no more in parliament, raised that said to them that, no, it's not about that, you are wrong. We don't want to be part of your domestic problem. What do you say to that?
Domestic problem. We are all we are dealing every day with the domestic problem of the
Gambia
as a partner.
No, he said because the issue between Russia and then Ukraine, it's in Europe, and then it's something domestic. It's not Gambia. So Gambia doesn't want to be part of whatever is in that. That's why they abstain from voting. And he called on the European member states to respect that.
I mean, the war between Russia and Ukraine and is not a war with the European Union, is between Russia and Ukraine, is affecting the increase of prices of the world food, is affecting the price of petrol that you can see here in the Gambia. The Gambia and all Africa are affected like the rest of the world of this war. And that is why we should be all against this war, among the humanitarian and human rights reason, where a sovereign state is attacked by a bordering state with no reason. We are all affected economically. Europe is affected economically. The Gambia is affected economically. Senegal is affected economically. Egypt is affected economically. So it's not, we live in a world that is completely interconnected, whether we want it or not. So whatever affects some countries far away from your country affects also your country. So you have a right in saying, and you must exercise this right, because if you stay out, you just become a victim. You have no role anymore. It is always in the world that we are living that is very small. It became a small world where when I was working on Fiji, that is exactly on the opposite side of the earth from my country. In 30 hours of flight, I was there. So it's a very small world. In a small world like this one, everyone needs to try to influence the course of events.
Okay, maybe the debate will continue in another. Let's shift our attention to another point. In the beginning of the interview, you were able to recall or remember the expenditure or the expenses the European Union made in the first 5 years of President Adama Barrow, which from the record I have confirmed is 365 million euro, equivalent to almost about $22 billion in those days. And there were a lot of, specifically few reforms that were being implemented, are still being implemented as per the claims of the authorities. These are the civil service reform, the security sector reform, and the legal reforms. What's the EU's assessment of these reforms?
Well, the assessment is that we have accompanied many of these processes together with other stakeholders. Can I for example, name a few? One is the UNDP and the UN nation, the UN family. But also we have also bilateral help that comes from France, from Spain, from Germany, from Italy, etc. So there are a number of stakeholders in all this. The assessment is that the transition is well on its way. Elections have been democratic, peaceful. They met the standard following all the missions that the electoral missions that have been in the Gambia to monitor them. We expect from the government that the transition, as it has been enunciated in the intentions of the president, is completed. So, for example, we look forward to see a new constitution. We are waiting for the white paper on the TRRC. But we are also looking forward to work more on the security sector reform. We are looking to cooperate with the judiciary system, but also we are looking to cooperate more with the National Assembly. So we are trying to help the ambitions of this country to become a fully mature democracy.
Are you disappointed on the aspect of legal reforms that the new constitution could not pass the National Assembly?
No, I cannot say that I'm disappointed.
As European Union, I mean, not you in particular.
Well, let's say that especially the second time we had big hopes on the approval of the constitution. Obviously, it was not, the times were not mature enough. I hear quite often that President Barrow wants to have a new constitution on this term. So, and we stand ready to cooperate with President Barrow and his government. And we have to work to have a new constitution, yes, because it's an old constitution, and it's also a sort of it contains more amendments than its first chapters. So it's a constitution that needs a revision under many aspects.
Yes. So on a final note, here, the European Union and the EU Election Observation Mission are two different institutions. But
yes.
This is not to the understanding of many. Could you kindly discern one from the other?
Well, let's say that the monitoring missions must be independent because they cannot be influenced by politics. They are observer, and they must be an independent observer that has a sort of magnifier lens and look on all the aspects on the elections related topics. Now, as I told you, they cannot be influenced, so I cannot influence them. The embassy has the specific task not to influence the monitoring mission.
So who supports who?
Who supports who? What does it mean?
The election mission, is it supported by the European Union?
Yeah. It's
yes.
paid by the European
That's
Union.
What I'm trying to drive.
But it is
yes.
contracted and are independent consultants.
It is a body that is contracted by the European Union to observe election missions in the Gambia, and it is paid by the European Union.
Exactly. It's paid by the European Union, but there, as I told you before, there are different bodies on the European Union, and each body is independent from the other. They are interconnected, but, for example, the fact that the monitoring mission is paid by the European Commission, the political part of the institutions, that is the European External Action Service, to which I belong, cannot mingle with the financing or the managing of the monitoring mission. And this is created exactly for the purpose to have an independent view.
Thank you very much. You have a final remarks to make for this interview?
No, I hope that there are so many things to say, and I hope that what you asked me has been answered in a satisfactory way. If not, I'm very happy to come another time.
Well, thank you very much. That was His Excellency Corrado Pampaloni, the European Union Delegation Ambassador in the Gambia here. He has, of course, given you the perspective of the European Union, how it came into being, its programs and policies on the Gambia. And as far as the most contentious issue, that is the migration agreement between the European Union member states, not the European Union, but the European Union member states and the Gambian government. So that was him on this interview here on Kerr Fatou. I was your host, Mustafa Sise. Thank you very much until we come your way next time. Goodbye.
Agada.
Mbijal aganya.
Albaka.
Mbaka important.
Yo, nga transfer la sto.
Ya transfer la.
Ha, code nyinji.
Okay. What's that? Nsila ID sort of.
Sorry.
agada
Bijandro.
alba
Mbaka.
bara alla service o tariya
Mbale.
ko ki janna nun kunu bara tariya
Jannom yona forest de bureau. Gambia tonkon na no mbali ya bere. Birim koyna fo kato.
bari si kodo kino kato nim fo bolon blabe
56 branches mola sota Gambia jam.
ha
Gambia kono ani Gambia bantala bankol. Nka kodo kiya bere. Kodo sifa fo falindiro fo nyaadi lafta memmen na kodi topoto nin kodi maraw. Jannom number 1 ti nyonta. Andum fana nata anoda enterprise sotale. Wolam nyindi ko domorol fana kol fana be firale de dadi ma ni domorol dir fana beteata. Gambia dawda yalo nga fa kendol sotale je.
wo moyo diat
apelenta
ni wo ka ni na lafta nyelen kendo le bina
yalo bukani na ko la baraka ba
yalo ndel chosano lo
abaraka